Heyo everybody, Haku here with my live reaction to read through for Tower of God chapter 645 or season 3 episode 228. I am very excited to read this week. I'm gonna try to not make this an insanely long intro, but I even thought after last week's chapter and seeing everybody's comments and stuff, making an extra video and stuff. So hopefully this doesn't end up too long. I do want to say thank you for all of your comments. People agreeing, disagreeing, but, you know, adding more things that I hadn't even thought of, or just reinforcing some of the things that I had been thinking about. And one thing that I think was kind of big was it's like, you know, why even keep making videos on Tower of God if it's just going to be negative all the time? And one thing that I kind of wanted to make the video on is I was feeling this even when I posted last week's video before I even saw what anybody was going to say in response to it. I was thinking, I am so burnt out on Tower of God not being good. I just want it to be good so badly. Because, you know, if you've been around YouTube, there are a million channels that all their content is just insert game here is bad, insert TV show here is bad, movie, whatever. And that's very much the opposite of what I want to do. I want to make videos on things I love and talk about how much I love them and how great they are, which is why my content is pretty much universally positive most of the time. And even with, we had this before with One Piece. I'm trying to keep my thoughts somewhat organized here. I just want Tower of God to be good. I want to talk about how good Tower of God is every week. The problem is just it not being good too much recently. There have been some chapters that I've liked a lot. Of course, I love the Amizu flashback. I love so much of the character work that's been done with Traumeré and Gaston. I think that the overall fight between Traumeré and Gaston, we've spent a lot of time kind of spinning wheels, and we've had some moments that haven't been as great. We've kind of paced it out, not that great, but like individual moments of it, I think there have been so many incredible moments, and I think the writing of the characters has been very good when it comes to the two of them. So, you know, it's one of those things where this arc has just been very, very, very hit and miss. And for me, I was talking a lot last week where I was, and like not even just last week, but a lot lately in general, like where I'm like, I don't know where you go from here. I don't know like quite how to fix this, and saying, hey, maybe this should be done like this. Maybe this should be done like that. And honestly, something that I thought about coming into this is to be maybe even too hopelessly optimistic, hopelessly hopeful. One thing that I think is just make some good chapters. So I have seen occasionally, I said before, occasionally I'll go look at the Korean comments on a chapter after I read the official, or I'll check some things to see what the name translation looks like, if any names are weird. And so I've seen like scores and stuff, like number scores, and usually those don't affect me at all. I think the number score for the chapter where we had like the new members of Revolution coming in and Yama's transformation and all that, I think that had a lower score than the chapter before that one, but I thought it was a lot better than the chapter before it. Sure, there were issues, sure, there were things I can criticize, like with maybe how it should have been longer, it should have been over the course of multiple chapters, we maybe should have seen it a little earlier in the arc, but aside from those criticisms, I really, really, really like that chapter, and I thought it was better than the chapter before, despite it having a lower score. So I know that there are a couple more, I don't know how many more, with lower scores. That shouldn't affect me. Hopefully I disagree with them. Hopefully I like these chapters. And then there are some really, really high-scoring chapters right at the end. And so what I was thinking about is it's really kind of easy to forgive with a series that's this long running. It's already happened with One Piece, in my opinion, but imagine here, you know, this arc has been hit and miss. We have had some amazing, amazing chapters. We have had some that aren't that great. But imagine this chapter is really good. And then the next chapter is good. The next chapter is good. And we finish off the season with good chapters. Or even if the next 2 or 3 aren't good, but then the last 5-ish of the season are really good. And then we get the spin-off, whatever C is doing next, and it's just good chapter after good chapter. Then we come back for season 4 and it's just good chapter after good chapter. I think that kind of smooths things over. Like, you'll always be able to look back on this and be like, wow, there was some stuff in there that wasn't very good. But just like people can look back and say, yeah, there's some stuff, some subplots that aren't that great in the Cage. I personally really like the Cage, but I do think there are some parts that aren't the best. Just like how you can look back and be like, there are parts that weren't the best. But there's a lot I liked. You could do that here, where imagine 3 years from now, we are like, there was some bad stuff that happened in the Sprout-ish area of the story, but CU hasn't put out a bad chapter in 3 years, so who cares? Because with a series that's this long running, I think, it'll always affect the overall story. And you can look back on it and say that it's not that great, but honestly, all you got to do is start putting out good chapters, and I think that smooths over with something this long pretty easily. Like, even if it never, say, gets back to the narrative quality of, like, Return of the Prince Workshop Battle, it can still be quite good. And I say it's already happened with One Piece, because with One Piece, I'll go spoiler free, but it's like pre-time skip One Piece, in my opinion, is near perfect storytelling. It is so incredibly good. And then the second you get into post-time skip, the second you hit Fishman Island, there's a noticeable dip in quality. It's still One Piece, it's still good, but there's a dip in quality, and that carries on into the arcs after Fishman Island, which I think are personally better than Fishman Island, but it remains the same. There's a notable drop in quality from pre-time skip to post-time skip, and that carries on, and that's a little bit different from Tower of God, where, say, if you're looking at One Piece's Dressrosa's storytelling was very good. The writing was very good. The pacing was just abysmal. That good writing was just not paced out very well. But there is this decline, and then you hit Wano, and Wano is awful. Terrible, terrible writing. Very bad. And even when I was covering One Piece weekly for 6-7 years at that point, I had been reading it for much, much longer, since I was a kid reading and watching One Piece. When I got to late Wano, I was just like, I am negative every single week. I can't do this anymore. The series isn't good anymore, and I don't know if it'll ever be good again. So for months, I stopped covering One Piece, and even when it got out of Wano, I still just didn't cover it for a while. But then eventually, I started getting back into covering it, because I was like, you know what? Again, it's not perfect. Again, Wano might permanently tarnish its legacy, but it's like the chapters have been better. There are things to criticize. It's not perfect, but they've definitely been better. And then they get even better and even better. Late Egghead was great. Getting into Elbaf has been great. So we've already seen it happen, where a story was great, there's a noticeable decline in quality, a really bad arc, but then the quality just jumps up again. It gets good again. So I can kind of hold out hope that Tower of God can do the same. Even if this arc wasn't the best, I can hold out hope that, again, if we finish it off strong, if we have the rest of these chapters, if they can somehow be good, hopefully, and then we come back from hiatus and the chapters are good, because last time we came off of hiatus was, I think, some of CU's strongest stuff in a while, then I think that, we can, again, this might always hurt Tower of God's overall story, overall legacy when you're reading through the full thing. But I think that it's so long that that's kind of all right. Again, if you are reading through, marathoning 3 years from now, and then you get 600 good chapters, and it's like, wow, those 600 chapters were really good. And then you get 50 chapters where some aren't very good and some are really good, then it's like, okay, well, that's a rough spot. But then you go from there 3 years from now, and well, if we have, luckily, maybe another 100 to 150 chapters, depending on how long these breaks are going to be, we could be like, okay, and then after that rough spot, we have another 100 good chapters. So it's like 600 good chapters, a rough spot where some chapters are still good, and then 100 other good chapters. I think, all we need for the future, CU to come back off of this break at a strong point. But I think that's about all I wanted to say. I did want to talk about that, and there's maybe more, but if I think of it, I'll say something. In addition to that, sorry this video was a day late. I was going to record it when the chapter came out as usual last night, but the chapter's already come out kind of late, and I could not get my camera to work with OBS. Like, my camera wouldn't turn on if OBS was open, and if I tried to go into the settings or the properties of anything in OBS, it would crash. So I was like, okay. I tried messing around with things for a while last night, but I was like, yeah, it's late, it's Sunday night, I'll just try again tomorrow. So today I spent 2 hours being like, okay, let's try all this different stuff. I was eventually like, okay, let's just uninstall and reinstall OBS itself. Did not work. Let's uninstall and reinstall all my drivers for my camera. Still didn't work. So eventually I just had to do a full just Windows repair for everything, and things look like they're working perfectly fine now. I only had to reset a couple of my settings and stuff. So hopefully everything sounds okay, okay. Hopefully everything looks okay. I am still dealing with health issues, so sorry about that if that interrupts me at all during this. But yeah, with all of that aside, I think I can finally start reading. Long Haku intro over, but at least it wasn't like the longest. So again, hopefully, like I said, I think the next couple chapters had kind of rough scores, but then there were really good scores for the last like 5 or so. But hopefully I can disagree with those rough scores. Hopefully these next few, I'll still think they're good. So let's see what we have this time around though. So we have Hidden Memory Fragments of That Day Part 2. I am a little bit worried though, because I think that so much of this arc has been hit and miss, and like the Traumerei Gastang writing has been some of the strongest stuff. Like so many things where we'll get a moment where we're like, oh, Traumerei's doing this thing and it ties into something that somebody said about his personality in the past, or Gastang is like this and it ties into this thing from the past. So many good moments of that, and I think the strongest just stretch of writing this entire arc, I keep saying it, is the Amizu flashback. I think that is a very, very strong stretch of writing. So it worries me now, Bomb being like, oh, don't you know you're kind of at fault, Enkidu? And I think that the writing of what Traumerei did in blaming Enkidu and all this different stuff, and Gastang being like, I want to believe Traumerei, but I'm going to keep Enkidu alive just in case. I think all of that is like really, really, really well written. So I'm extremely worried that the most well-written chunk of this arc could be thrown down the toilet by being like, actually, Traumerei might not have been that evil, and actually, Enkidu might have been, like, we know Enkidu was, like, jealous and stuff, we know he had his own emotional control issues, so this could be done fine, but it does really worry me that Siyu could have walked back some of his, like, good writing in this arc. In order for a living creature to be born, certain laws of nature must be followed. That being said, in the case of this creature, what in the world were the laws that created him? Every time I see him, it feels like I'm looking at a creature that shouldn't exist in this tower. His very existence is a mystery to me. I could have never become Traumerei, but I wouldn't have wanted to anyway. This is extremely interesting. At first, I thought it was Traumerei's perspective of Enkidu, but then it shifts, and it's Enkidu's perspective of Traumerei, and it makes a lot of sense. All I really wanted was to have a spot as close to that beautiful creature as possible. I just wanted to have the privilege of gazing at him and talking to him. Traumerei, I caught all the animals like you asked. A few of them were hiding in the most unexpected places. Well done, Enkidu. But why did you want me to catch these animals if you aren't going to use them as minions? Curious, are you? Well, yeah, of course. Is he going to use them for his experiments to make the chimeras and stuff? I suppose I could tell you, since you'll need to know eventually. But when you find this out, you'll learn a secret about me that might surprise you. You mustn't reveal this to another soul. If you do, I'll have to kill you. Are you sure you want to see? You look scared. Just as I thought. You're not ready for this. No, I'm ready. I want to know more about you. Let me in on your secret. In that case, come with me. Alright. Inside Traumerei's palace. Whoa, a secret area. Okay, we might get an explanation on what we saw before. Dear God, that the person I'm guessing is Arlen was looking at. Traumere, what the heck is all this? It's an experiment to combine different species. My goal is to create... Sorry, I just spit everywhere. It's an experiment to combine different species. My goal is to create a sort of chimera without boundaries, a cross between humans, animals, and some other species. I'm guessing you'd like to ask me why I'm doing this, right? Yeah. What I hope to achieve with this experiment is very simple. I wish to subjugate every creature in this tower, in order to eliminate all differences and variables. Variables? That's right. What do you think is the cause of all the tragedies in this tower, Enkidu? Why can't we all get along? How do we all reach the point where even the best of friends can become enemies and kill one another? The reason is that each creature comes with too many potential variables. Every creature has different ideas and views. They think differently, and even behave differently from one another. In the end, that leads to division and war. I want to get rid of those differences and variables, and make every creature in the tower the same as animals, including humans. And this is cool. So we know that Traumere is warped and he wants to control everyone, but we're seeing his justification, his internal logic of why he wants to control everything, or at least why he would say he wants to control everything. Maybe he's saying this to convince himself, or maybe this is what he would say to convince others, or maybe this is what he really truly believes. And, you know, what you try to convince yourself you believe and what you actually believe are, like, you know, kind of mostly probably the same. So that is very, very cool. There was something else I was going to say. It makes a lot of sense for Traumere to do this as well, given what we saw in the flashbacks with V, where Gaston had noted, even climbing the tower, that Traumere always had this warped perspective, and we see a lot from Traumere that the warped perspective comes from the warped things they went through, and that kind of trauma affects different people in different ways. And the way that it affected Traumere, we've seen in the past, is that he's like, oh wow, we have to go through these horrible tests. Well, I care about us, so I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect us and do what's good for us. And so for him, like, everything outside of us is this unknown variable. So trying to make it all the same makes sense for Traumere, I think. Especially if we don't know what, like, that day was in terms of, like, what happened when they were turned on by the tower natives and stuff. It could be a situation where something really, really bad happened because of all these variables. And that's another reason why Traumere now would want, like, after finishing his climb, would want to do something like this. That's why I need to control them first. And once all the variables in this world have vanished under my control, we can go back to the way we once were as well. And it probably, this is cool, it might also have something to do with V and Arlen, because for whatever reason, everybody else ended up siding. We know that the Enkidu Amizu situation had something to do with it, to a certain degree, but everyone ended up siding with Zahard except for V and Arlen, who wanted to continue climbing. And I wonder if those variables have anything to do with the reason that V and Arlen decided to continue climbing. And that's another part of why this is an issue for him. Then I won't need disconnect anymore to cut myself off from anything. Traumere. When I heard him say that, the ethicality or legality of the experiment didn't cross my mind. Nor did I feel sympathy for those creatures in those test tubes that had become the victims of this absurd experiment. All I felt was pity for Traumere. I pitied the intense loneliness that I sensed in him. This is cool too, because loneliness has been big for Traumere's character, where, again, he disconnects himself from everything. Things went wrong, and again, where other characters responded in different ways, We don't know the full extent of what everybody else did, but we saw so many others go and start forming their families, start establishing themselves. Zahard making himself king, expanding his empire, probably doing so many other things that we only know the teeniest bit about so far. And Traumerei cut himself off and worked on this. So it does just feel like he is a character that feels almost in some way like he was left behind by everyone, but that his own personal choice is kind of what happened to leave him behind. Anyway, let's go. Remember, you must never mention this to anyone, especially not to Amizu. The torment and loneliness of a special being. I wanted to be someone who could understand him and fill that emptiness in him. How could I have forgotten? I'm not one of the people Traumerei referred to when he said we or us. Okay, and the loom here, okay, maybe not. I was gonna say it made it seem like whatever was in this test tube seemed extra important, and it seemed like a person with plants going into him. Could this be related to the sprout or Gran Abuelo? If it's like a person with like plants going into them? Okay, that might be something. To him I was no different from the insignificant creatures in those test tubes. We see him knocking. Come in, Enkidu. What do you want to see me about? He's meeting with Amizu. I received this beautiful flower pot as a gift. Would you put it in Traumerei's room for me? You seem to be the only servant who's allowed in his room these days, or nowadays. I'm not sure that's a good idea. As you know, Traumerei doesn't like flowers. I'm trying to make him like them, if possible. Even lovers ought to respect each other's tastes, don't you think? That's true, but I want him to understand that the flowers represent how much he means to me. This is good. Yeah, we're only a quarter of the way in, so there might be some not great stuff toward the end, but I love this so far. I think the stuff with Traumerei's character was really good there, and I'm liking this stuff a lot. It feels like we're getting to see more of Amizu's personality and how much she cares, and I love the use of the flowers and the plants here, because we know Traumerei mentioned before that the flowers did whatever they wanted, plants did whatever they wanted without his control, without his say in it, and he disliked that. And now we're bringing up him disliking it again after just having this conversation about him not liking variables outside of his control. And of course, flowers, plants, growing and spreading and living beings outside of his control is something that would bother him, something he wouldn't like. And I like that, again, using this as I'm trying, like, it's meant to represent how much he means. I like that, sorry about that, I cannot breathe. But yeah, her saying, like, it's a representation of her love and everything. It's kind of like her giving him flowers. Get used to it, Traumerei. Get used to things outside of your control. Like, learn to love things, or accept things, even if you can't control them. I'm just saying, I'd feel pressured if I were him. But anyway, I'll bring the flowers to him. Enkidu, how's Traumerei been lately? You know the answer to that. Why do you ask? He's the same as always. When he isn't going around collecting animals or hunting down ancient creatures, he stays in his room all the time. I was asking about his feelings, not what he's been doing. I've been thinking of doing something to fix our relationship. What? We're going to be meeting our friends soon. I don't want them to see us like this. I'd like to have an honest, open conversation with Traumerei and decide what to do about our future, because I still love him so much. I thought you didn't have feelings for each other anymore. How could you say that? Couples can become distant from time to time. Of course, Traumerei might not feel affection for me anymore, but still. I want to give our relationship one last chance. Would you help us get closer to each other again? And I guess maybe this is leading into the conversation that we saw between them. I wanted to say no. Amizu. Yeah? You asked me how Traumerei's been lately, right? I'm not sure what to call this emotion, but in any case, I really didn't want the two of them to get back together again. By any chance, are you aware of Traumere's secret? What secret? I'm glad the two of you are trying to work things out and everything. That's why. But first, there's something you need to know. I think you ought to wait until then, before you decide anything. I decided to break my promise to Traumere. So, I still don't view what Enkidu did as that bad. Like, she was going to try to make things work with Traumere, and Enkidu was like, hey, he's keeping something from you. He's hiding something from you. You ought to know about it. Of course, did Enkidu do it because it seems like he was jealous of her and wanted, Traumere to himself or to acknowledge him more? Yeah, but in the end, it seems like she probably learned this. I didn't even know that she learned about this, but let's say she learned this, and then that influenced her decision where at the proposal night of the party, she was like, Traumere, I've decided to leave. This probably influenced her decision to, instead of try to make it work one last time, to leave. We see her slump down, and it was in that very room that Amizu made up her mind. Okay, let's take a look at these. I don't know if any of them will mean anything. Just glancing through a little. Okay. Just glancing through a little. The one kind of reminds me of Rykard, this little snake guy with the, arm and leg sticking out. Oh, and we have... Is that six-legged lizard? Right there? Okay. Just looking through a little. She decided to completely break up with Traumere. Even if that did result in the end of their relationship, it's not my fault. Yeah, I feel like Enkidu just gave her the truth. I don't know what Bomb's on about. Everything she saw there was the truth. I'm sorry. I should have stopped him. But Traumere despises humans so deeply. He's trying to combine animals and human beings into a single species. I never once lied to Amizu. I think his ultimate goal is to eradicate all humans and create a tower inhabited only by chimera known as Beastkin. If anyone's at fault, it's Amizu. Traumere. She failed to understand the profound loneliness. And from Enkidu's perspective, he is kind of still looking at Traumere kind of as a god, and he's like, she just doesn't understand. His existence is so far different from our existence that he can't possibly live among us, and he has to do this. But then from her perspective, she doesn't see Traumere as this untouchable god. She sees Traumere as like one of them. He's part of we. He's part of us. And so she sees it, and it's not just the ethical implications, it's personal. Because if Traumere wants to do this, if Traumere wants people to be under his control, then what does that say about how Traumere feels about her? He doesn't trust her own free will. He wants to take away that free will when she was somebody who loved him. But I like that we're seeing this information and two totally different reactions between how Enkidu sees Traumere and how Amizu sees Traumere, and how that causes them to interpret the bad things Traumere is doing. How Enkidu will excuse it because he sees Traumere as a god, but Amizu's betrayed by it because she saw Traumere as... It's tough to say an equal, but you get what I mean. Like, an equal, they were partners. Even if not, like, power-wise equal, because that, but power scaling, he's an irregular. That's not what I mean. That drove Traumere to take such extreme measures. How could he do such a thing? Why? Why? She's the one in the wrong. Amizu, you have no right to be with him. I'm the only one who deserves to be by Traumere's side. At least. Why? That's what I deluded myself into thinking. Why would you do this? The day of the party. The ring falls out if you turn it upside down like this. She's going to love it. And this recontextualizes this a little bit, given that Enkidu likely already knew her intentions. I bet she'll be speechless when you hand it to her. You're so pretty, Amizu. It's not really my style. You've got this. Sing us a song. I'm sure it's going to be a memorable proposal. Even then, I don't think it ever occurred to me that Amizu would choose to leave this place voluntarily, because I didn't have that sort of free will myself. So when she did decide that of her own free will, it made me furious. And now we have the blade clashing against Bomb's swirly claw thing, Leviathan claws. I was such a fool. I thought Tromare saw me differently from those other lowly creatures, because I understood him, even when he shared that secret with me. And this is something that somebody brought up in the comments too that's worth bringing up, like power scaling wise, is, again, to use the word inconsistency a lot. The inconsistency of it, where sometimes a certain character will be presented as like really strong, sometimes the regulars are like standing up to rankers. Like CU's been really inconsistent here with sometimes regulars are just completely outmatched, you're going to get one shot, and then sometimes they're standing up to high rankers perfectly fine and stuff. Of course, like the regulars we have here are very much exceptions to the rule, but how strong Enkidu is, or how strong Bellerir is, has been super, super, super inconsistent. Like, from the first time we see Enkidu versus Tiara compared to some of the stuff we later see of Enkidu. Or, like I was saying a lot with that stretch of chapters with Andorthi, where she's special. She is a princess and everything. So it's not about how strong she is necessarily to me. It was that in the past, we've seen her up against like high rankers and stuff and still able to use her ingenuity or the special abilities she has to play some sort of role, do something. Even if she's completely outmatched, completely overpowered, she doesn't stand a chance. But when dealing with the Enkidu goop stuff, she kept getting grabbed and stuff, and it's not like she was trying to think of a way out, or playing things to her advantage, or trying to come up with a smart idea. She was just kind of not doing things a lot of the time, and it just felt really out of character, where it's not even a power scaling thing, it's just a writing thing in terms of writing what she is doing compared to how she is faced similar situations, like comparing how she was in the face of Enkidu compared to how she was in the face of the Serpent Master, or compared to characters like Karaka back in Hell Train, compared to the Workshop security back at Workshop Battle, and that's again a much weaker threat, but the way that she reacted and acted in those circumstances versus how she acted here. So it's the inconsistency of it writing wise, and that's what's happened here with the like sort of power scaling, where sometimes it's not even necessarily power scaling, but sometimes characters look weirdly strong, but then in another situation where you think, okay, if they were weirdly strong in this situation, they should be fine, they'll be weirdly weak. So that's something else that's been a bit off this arc. I thought I was his only true friend, but Tromare betrayed me. True, he abandoned me, betrayed you, because of that twisted obsession of yours. You blew your last chance to stop Tromare. Bomb knocks him back. Isn't that right? Are we going to learn more? Fine, I admit it, I was delusional. That jerk never saw me any differently from those chimera and lower creatures in the test tubes. My only mistake is that I trusted that bastard. Bomb dodges. He keeps getting stronger since he transformed. That's not true. You never once trusted Tromare, which means you were never friends either. Bomb's inclusion in this just seems so weird, and what he's saying makes not a lot of like not perfect sense compared to what we've seen. What? You just wanted to make yourself feel important by siding with someone special like Tromare. That's also why you were always so worried about someone taking your place next to him. That's not what it means to be friends. A friend isn't someone you keep to yourself so that no one else can have them. And friends don't make each other miserable to satisfy their own desires. Trummery only kept you near him because he doesn't trust people and he could boss you around as much as he wanted. And you tried to wipe out everyone who mattered to Trommery for the sake of your own greed. You're both the same. The two of you were never friends in the first place. What? You don't know what you're saying. I've heard enough of this bullshit. And Mom's like, kind of right. In that they were both using each other to a certain degree. But the level of Enkidu versus Trommery is completely different. And then his bleed changes. We have... Oh no, this isn't good. Okay, cool blade transformation. Bomb is even being sent backwards by it. Alright. Oh, and is the resentment of Enkidu coming into contact with the V-hole? He's launching his Getsuga Tenchos. Alright. Ugh. Bomb's still wounded. He's so powerful. You dare to lecture me, boy. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, do you? What's that supposed to mean? When I left this body earlier, Bellerir and Gododo came flying out along with the debris. What do you think a couple of guys hell-bent on revenge like them might go... Hold on just a moment. So Enkidu, he still has Bellerir's pants and goofy-ass shoes on. I think there might be some mistakes, because I swear he was barefoot a couple times. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I'm just thinking of the flashback. But he transformed the Bellerir body he was in into this Enkidu body. But does this mean he split off two separate bodies away from this body? So there were two Bellerirs at one point. But he split off two bodies. And now Bellerir and Gododo are both doing their own thing. So I think Gododo could be key in this. Again, maybe not. But it's just the speech that Gododo gave before he was taken over. When he's like, oh, I'm just the bishop. I can't do anything on my own. I was like, this means he's going to do something, isn't it? So I think that Gododo could actually be clutch to whatever plotline finishes off this arc. So Gododo is like a piece in play again. And Bellerir is still gonna be able to do Bellerir things. But does that mean that they still have goop powers? Or are they just back to their normal selves? What do you think a couple of guys hell-bent on revenge like them might go after? Pretty soon. I bet they'll get their hands on the chess piece. We have, because no one would ever expect to come after them in liquid form. So they're all three now goop people. Stop right there. Are they all three like mental? Because again, like Bellerir was mentally talking to Enkidu when he transformed into the Enkidu form. So does this mean all three of their minds, though, are within the goop? They have like a hive mind? Or did they all just sort of, like amoebas reproducing? They're all three separate entities, but all goop people now. Stop right there. They'll never see it coming. That's not fair. What is this line? Fair? What are you talking about? This is a game, remember? Thanks. I appreciate the valuable tip. Now that we know where Poppadow's king is, all we need to do is go and get to it. The pocket's turned on? Kun, you're awake. That's right. Sorry, Bomb. I didn't mean to sleep for so long, or be asleep for so long. But we've got Lopobia's king, so I hope you'll forgive me. What? You have Lopobia's king? Yep, I'm not sure what happened while I was asleep, but somehow we managed to get it. What? What are you people doing with Lopobia's king? Who are you? Who do you think we are, you numbskull? Maybe you don't know because you've never experienced this yourself. We're the kind of people who are there for each other no matter what, without expecting anything in return. We're friends. Kun. You little brats. And see, this is so tough, because I think this would be super well written if Bomb and Kun were a bit more well written. because having friendship be what kind of screws up what Enkidu was hoping to happen after Enkidu was like, yeah, Tromari was never really my friend, and he's forced to confront the fact that maybe he never really viewed Tromari as a friend either, because honestly he didn't. He viewed him as like a god. He viewed him as an existence above himself, and he was just trying to suck up to him until he could try to get to that level himself in a way. It was almost sort of just a hero worship type thing, which is why I think it's totally different from the way that Tromare was towards Enkidu. Again, it's not friendship, but it's a totally different sort of story and thing going on. So I think this is really good. Be like, it's power of friendship, but it makes sense for power of friendship to win here. The only issue I have with it is that I just wish Bam and Kun were more well written this arc to make this feel more earned. You little brats. And I mean, like, in reality, Kun just got given the piece by Dumas. But it is what it is. I thought, so again, like I said, hopefully I could disagree with harsh scores. I thought this one had a harsh score, but I like this chapter. I think the stuff at the beginning with Enkidu and Tromare was really good. I think the Enkidu and Amizu stuff was really good. I think the only place where it starts to lose me a little bit is Bam and Enkidu, but even then, I don't think that was that bad. It loses me a little bit. Some of the stuff Bam said was, I was like, why are you saying this? Why would you believe this? Is this quite true? But even then, I don't think that was that bad. And then at the end, with Kun coming in, again, it makes you want to cringe and eye roll because it's Kun and because of how he's been written for the past dozens of chapters. But I think that having this be what happens with Enkidu works to a certain degree. It's just, I kind of hope that Enkidu and Tromare maybe have a little bit of something in the future. Maybe. I feel like, has Enkidu even really... Yeah, he had one conversation with Tromare, like way back when Bellerir first got to him. But that's about it. So I'd maybe like to see a little bit more out of Enkidu, but if we like kind of wrap up the writing for Enkidu and have him die here, I think Enkidu could be a fully fleshed out character start to finish in this arc. He doesn't need to carry on into future arcs. I think that Enkidu could just be a solid arc character like Hema Slime was for her arc, like some of the what is it? Inietta was for Workshop Battle, or Mata was for Floor of Death. Garam is probably going to show up again at some point in the future, but like Garam was for Floor of Death, she was an art character there, but she's more important. She's probably going to be back at some point. But again, I think that we could have Enkidu end his story as a fully fleshed out art character, depending on how things go. I'm a little bit, again, kind of on the fence. I don't know how things are going to go with Gororo and Bellerir. I don't really know how things are going to go there, but I think I'm super relieved too. I'm super relieved in the sense that I was a bit worried after last week's chapter, in the end of last week's chapter, that we would kind of walk back some of Tromare's faults in the Amizu flashback, but instead we kind of fleshed it out a bit more. I don't think anything was really contradictory, and if anything, we fleshed out Amizu's decision more, so it's not like she just decided, oh well, she's going to leave him. She was still going to try to make it work, like she was saying before, but then we see what really pushed her over the edge. So I think that's really good, and we get to see some more. We saw a bit before, like Enkidu not controlling himself, some of his negative thoughts and emotions before in the Amizu flashback, but now we got that more fleshed out. I think this was a solid chapter. I enjoyed almost all of it, and even the parts that I didn't think were like perfect, they're just like small nitpicks of like, oh, well, that's not the best, but it's not like terrible or anything. So yeah, I don't know. I'm totally cool with this chapter. I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. So hopefully, like I said, if we continue from this, if next week's chapter is good, and the chapter after that is good, and we continue on for a few more weeks until we're done with season 3, and then we get our spin-off, and all of that is good, and then we start season 4, and it's like, okay, this chapter is good, now this chapter is good. If we do that, then I feel like some of the bad stuff this arc, in 3 years' time, you're going to look back and you're going to look at it like the bad stuff in Last Station or the bad stuff in The Cage, where you can just look back at it and it's like, okay, but that's kind of in the scope of 600 plus chapters. By the time we get to 700 plus chapters, in the grand scope of things, it's like, okay, there were some bad stuff here and there, but we can really move on from that when it's just a very small percentage of the greater whole. I don't think that there's anything thus far that is like series ruiningly off. The V flashback, questionable, because there's some stuff there that I'm like, okay, we just gotta wait and see what CU does with it. But it could be not the best. The stuff with the main trio, kind of rough, but again, if we write it in such a way that we just put them into better situations, or write them better in the situations they're put into, or we have the other characters around them kind of like help fill in the gaps and lift that up a bit, then we can kind of try to remedy that a little bit. The main trio, I think, is maybe the roughest overall thing that will continue on into the story, that maybe CU would need to work on doing a better job with in the future. But yeah, so hopefully there were many things I didn't like this arc, but there were many things I loved. I was really worried last week where I was like, okay, this is like, we only have 8 chapters left and this is what we're doing. But I am so glad that I was so burnt out. I was so burnt out on Tower of God being bad that I am so happy to have read a chapter. And this whole time, because like I said, I don't like to let scores affect me, but I see that this has a lower score, I think. And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking to myself, like, I really hope I like this, but maybe not, since it has a lower score. But then I'm just so pleasantly surprised to have really enjoyed this one. And I really hope we can keep this up for the future. But yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did too. I'm going to end this here. I had to stop quite a bit to just cough, catch my breath. So I'm going to have to do a bit of editing. But let's go do that now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching. Like if you did like the video, comment down there too. Tell me what you thought. I have the worst posture when I record. I am like leaned all the way over. But thank you so much. I have the worst posture when I record. I don't sit like this normally in my chair even. It's just, I don't know, maybe because it's my mic here. I'm probably way too close to the mic and I'm peeking it all the time. I just can't help myself. I just lean in when I'm reading. Like, comment what you thought of this chapter, my thoughts, and all of that. Subscribe for more Tower of God, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. If you're linked to the Discord server, it's free and open for anyone. If you would like to help support the channel by dropping a super thanks, that's very much appreciated. But if you want to help support the channel, help me to keep making the videos. Like I said, I will do, since we're going into the hiatus, in a couple of weeks, just a couple of weeks, I'll start up the character poll. We'll do another character poll. I'll try to keep you all updated on what I'm doing with that. I really need to get off my buns and start working on that. So character poll will be coming, and a screen time video will be coming, because it'll be hiatus. Let's just do a screen time video, since I'm taking notes anyway. So with that all aside, and then maybe I can provide other people some content in our dry season, our time of need, as far as Tower of God goes, because I love watching other people's reactions to stuff like that too. But yeah, if you want to help support the channel and help keep those things coming, plus I got to do Kubera and ORV after this too. Maybe not directly after I finish recording this, but it's at some point. If you want to help with all of that, then you could hit join down below to become a channel member, or go to patreon.com/Haku of the Tubes, or a link will be in the description to become a patron. Thank you so much to people who are already patrons and channel members. Thank you to Chosen Regular Evan Holly, Magical Girls, FRNono, JA, and the D-Ban, Cheriton Students, David Langstaff and Folded Gold Slayer Candidates SG and Stan Cedar, and Pure Element Pater Dial. I probably need to update this list. I don't think it's changed any, but some people may have earned some more crowns, so I will need to go and double check sometime soon. I have just been, between being sick and the holiday season and trying to catch up to things and do things despite being sick, I've been a mess. But thank you so much for your support. Thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you all next time.